ghosts, psychics, pendulums, curses, hexes. We welcome you here to Friday Night Dark in the realm of the night. Come join us and listen to this week's presentation, and we bid you welcome.
Good evening. This is Drew, and I welcome you back to Friday Night Dark. Hey, tonight I'm going to be talking about another tool. Before I move forward, just to let you know that this would be a continuance of something that I've been kind of contemplating and putting together. It started with a game that I started doing at the beginning of 2026 and the end of 2025. It's called Phasmophobia. In general, it basically is like a game of Clue where you take 3 items of evidence and you identify a ghost that you're trying to investigate. And when you identify it, get pictures and what have you with the tools that you have in the truck that comes with you, then you win money, which, well, I really wish I'd do that full time, to be honest. But it's a game and it's a fun game. But I did find a limitation in it, but I did find fascination in the fact that there were tools there. Some that I didn't realize you could use, and some that I know are used by others, and still yet others that I wasn't sure exactly how to explain them. And so this week I'm going to be talking about the motion sensor, which in itself is one of the tools that you would find in the game truck, if you will. And that's for the game Phasmophobia. Now, I'm doing this off of the piggyback idea of is there a right way to do a ghost hunt? And why that's important is because as I move forward, I want people to understand that the tools that I will be discussing for the coming sessions are ones that, for the most part, are ones that you may commonly find with some paranormal investigation groups. Not everyone has all of the equipment, and not all the equipment is with every investigation. So why would someone choose certain things? Well, they might be looking for certain types of ghosts, perhaps, or they're trying to identify it in the game. But in real practical life, sometimes there is a combination of equipment that may or may not be used. And here is one prime example. But let me not get ahead of myself here. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? A motion sensor can be useful but limited in a ghost hunt, and it's most effective as a baseline detector. It's a way to flag physical movement or environmental shifts rather than as a standalone evidence of a spirit. And you're probably thinking, well, if it triggers it and no one's there, that must be a ghost, right? No. It just means that there is a shift in the environment. Now, what a motion sensor can do in a paranormal investigation is it will detect physical movement in a defined area. Now, infrared motion sensors can pick up changes in heat signatures, which some investigators associate with spirit activity. And some motion sensors can alert you to subtle disturbances. Ultrasonic and microwave sensors can detect movement through the walls and or across larger spaces, giving you a heads up, if you will, when something actually shifts. Now, if there are some sensors that can provide a clear time-stamped trigger, when paired with cameras, audio recorders, or EMF meters, a motion alert becomes part of a larger pattern of activity. And so it can be a very useful tool on that alone. I'm just going to let you know, I have a lot of security cameras that I've purchased over the years. And some of them I've captured orbs with. Some of them I've just captured a lot of movement, but it turned out to be environmental shifts, whether it be from the air conditioning or heating that goes on and blows through the ducts that are there. In some cases, it was hard to determine what was triggering the cameras. But over time, I just learned that certain things correlated with environmental factors. And then in some cases, I got orbs that I broke down to bugs, dust orbs, and then finally the ones that I just couldn't figure out. And those are the ones that I've posted. You can probably see them. And I know it sounds like a little bit of a diversion, but relevance to this is the fact that I was actually able to see some of this at work with the tools that I managed to get at a bargain basement price. Now, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just wanted to give you a small example, if you will. Now, one thing for sure, if you have any motion-activated toys or props that can be deployed, they can be very effective for playful or childlike spirit encounters. There was one investigation by Hill City and Badlands I can't talk today. Badlands Paranormal, and they used actually at a place that was a quasi prison, or I think it was a prison or jail or something. And they used a pack of cigarettes that was rigged to go off if there was any movement within a very close proximity. And it's based on this very idea and concept. I thought it was pretty cool. But they did get some reactions from it, and in some cases there were questions. They would, yell out a timestamp and say it happened at blah, blah, blah time. And then they would say, oh, wait, there seems to be movement that's going on here. Now, the idea is novel, and it does actually present some ideas, but where it falls short is that in some cases you can and could get false positives. And so, of course, if there's a draft, insects, temperature shifts, even a distant vibration from, say, like a passing vehicle or whatnot, it can trigger these types of motion sensors. Now, REM pod is one thing, and I understand that's what it was, but to me, for tonight's concept, it still technically would be a kind of motion sensor, if you will, because something has to interact with it. And some of these toys that have these things will have that very basic concept, and so they can act as quasi REM pods. So although, yes, real equipment may or may not necessarily be something you need for every investigation, sometimes if you had something interactive, like a simple toy or whatnot, could, and would be a great way to attract the type of entity that might be in there in a real investigation, not just a game. In relationship to the actual game itself, they use the motion sensor to detect if something is coming your way. And so it's a good alarm, especially if you're trying to hunt something down or whatnot and get pictures or what have you. But that's the game. In reality, it's also a way to get confirmation and reaction from a said entity. Now, they require controlled conditions, so cluttered rooms, reflective surfaces, or fluctuating temperatures will definitely reduce reliability. So if you have a place with broken windows and creepy crawlers, it's going to be tough for that reason. And this is where motion sensors may fall short of what's going on. Now, they're still good as supporting evidence, and on their own, a triggered sensor doesn't really tell you what moved or why. It only says that it's there. Now, I know someone's going to say, but Drew, you have motion cameras, right? Well, yes, I do. But some aren't as effective still, and you can still go off with one of these things, and they can be triggered if there's a change in the air current. And that's why I was mentioning the stuff that I've done in the past and things that I've collected. Because, yes, there were environmental factors. If you heard in the background, you'll know that the environment behind me, I don't know how well the microphone picks that up still or not, but it does, in fact, show an example of what could possibly happen here. But there really isn't one kind of sensor. No, really. There's different types of motion sensors. There is like what they call a PIR or infrared, which is good for detecting heat changes, widely used, and they are moderate in false positives in some cases, because if a heater goes on, or if there's an air conditioner that goes on, it can change a temperature, and certainly for that reason, you're going to have issues. Now, there's an ultrasonic type of motion sensor. It's sensitive to subtle motion and can detect can detect through obstacles and may pick up even environmental noise in itself. Now, there is a microwave motion sensor, and it covers large areas. They're highly sensitive and they're prone to false triggers for the same reason. But let's not rule out things like motion activated toys, because there's a cat ball you can get which lights up as soon as it has some interaction with it. Some folks get into these things and they rig them so that basically someone can barely breathe on them and they'll go off. And that's precisely the point. You get one of these tools and something happens, it might even help you trace where something's coming from. And that's one nice thing about these things. The only thing is that other things can also trigger them off. So you really have to worry about it. But when I was living in one place, there were some toys that we had in a box. And they actually had motion activated sensors inside them. And they were constantly going off in the middle of the night for no reason. And what I mean by that is they were all stacked. There was no reason for them to go off. And all of a sudden, I mean, they made these weird sounds or whatnot. But I know that the kids that were living in that same home with me, they complained that the guy in the hall was doing it. And I'm like, no, you guys are playing with the toys. Like, no, it's not us. Okay, whatever. I moved the toys and I moved them to another portion of the house. And I said, these toys are for real kids and not fake ones. I should have never said that. Because that night, all the motion activated toys went off. It was like a riot. And I actually had jokingly done this in the past. We go to toy stores and you get like a whole bunch of like little toys or whatnot. You can push the button and try them. And I'd say I'm starting a riot. And basically what that means, I press the button to try them out on like every toy on the shelf, as you have all of them going out all at the same time, you know. But no, it's mean, but at the same time fun, because you have all these things going off and creating this, you know, noisy background. And so it either attracts a bunch of kids or it annoys a bunch of adults. In this case, the latter usually is what took place. And for me, when I said that, I basically triggered whatever, and they decided to set off their own riot for me and just let me know that they were basically expressing their displeasure. But then I was just thinking bad batteries until I changed them and then moved the toys again. And lo and behold, they went off one more time. So were there actual spirits interacting with them? Possibly. Is it a house that I would have considered that would have been haunted? No. But then again, sometimes you may not know. Now, for more real investigators, these will be used effectively with other things. Like you'll pair with tools like an EMF spike, EVPs, temperature drops, possibly even camera footage to help validate what that motion trigger is. As a matter of fact, if you establish a baseline and you run the sensor in an empty room, first to understand normal environmental behavior, it helps to debunk activity if something else is more organic in there. Say like a mouse, or possibly even a raccoon, possum, you take your pick. Maybe even if it's just in a domesticated house, people are living in there and you're just trying to prove it's haunted. If they have a pet like a cat or a dog, it's quite possible that they can trigger it as well. So you want to remove and basically account for those factors. So again, this is something that would help debunk activity if something is else more organic is living there, if you take those into consideration. But it will also be a way for you to control the environment. When you close the windows, eliminate airflow, remove any loose objects that might be there, and document all of the team movement that's in a hunt or an investigation. I'm sorry. It keeps the place clear of anything that could possibly trigger that motion sensor. Now, if you use multiple sensor types, which would be overlapping technologies to reduce the chance of a single false trigger, I've kind of seen people do that with a lot of different things, toys, cat balls, perhaps maybe even they might have what they call a REM pod, which is also motion based. But as you go, that motion sensor will be effective as a corroborating tool. Again, it's not necessarily proof of a haunting, but if it goes off and then the other equipment in the room does something with it, there's a good chance something is going on. And if you debunk all of the other things, it's quite possible that something going on, maybe that ghost that you're looking for. And like the game, you've just encountered something. But what? Now, the other day, I know someone was talking about this concept of what's called a Wi-Fi motion detection. And I read about that and wondered, well, would Wi-Fi motion detection be an effective tool? Surprisingly, I found out it could be a very powerful type of ghost hunt type of equipment, but it behaves very differently from other types of motion sensors, from like the PIR infrared sensors that you might see, or possibly even the microwave or ultrasonic sensors. Why? It's because it actually watches for disturbances in wireless signal patterns, much like the dot machine that you would see. And I might talk about that later, but let's get back to the rest of this. What it does is it's kind of like a digital echolocation. Bats use the same concept, using a kind of ultrasound, if you will. Echolocation is where they emit a sound and it bounces off. And if things bounce off closer, it means that there's an object in the way. One of my favorite comic book characters, Daredevil, he was blind, but he was able to hear and basically sense and see through his ears by a form of echolocation. Now, this is what the Wi-Fi motion detection is great, because what it does is it actually sees into the room or whatnot. And it creates kind of like this area where anything that goes in and disturbs it, it'll say, it's motion. Now there's a problem with this. The problem is that much like a bat, if it bounces off, it knows something's there, and it comes back sooner than the rest of the waves of Wi-Fi. But it's like a beach ball emanation. What I mean by that is that you take like a pin, and let's say that's your Wi-Fi motion detection, and it emits a signal that's omnidirectional, like a beach ball. Imagine a giant one, the size of, say, 16 feet from the middle, from where that pin emanates the signal. And so it can be above you, it can be below you, it can be all around you. Why that's important is because when you have something like this, it may map out what's going on to a certain degree, but it can also create a false positive because you don't know where it's coming from. It might be above you, and so that's not going to be very good if you're trying to concentrate in one room. That's where it kind of falls short. And the other problem with this is that it doesn't necessarily respond to people. It can respond to other things that are in the room besides ghostly activity, air shifts, and in some cases I've seen where pets can go through, animals or whatnot, and they trigger them just as much. I experimented with it, and someone told me that the reason why they kind of shied away from it is because it also presents another problem. It presents an issue with privacy, because if you have it enacted in your home, it actually will show what you're doing, walking around or whatnot, from what I understand. Now, I haven't played with it too much, but I've done enough to where I know it will trigger, and the more sensors you have that are capable of doing this, the more you can map out a room, which means that, well, there's privacy issues. There's a popular cable network that does actually use it, and so I know that there's been questions, and they've even put a disclaimer saying, you better check your cameras if you have any to make sure that you can confirm motion. Oh yeah, wait a minute, that's the idea. If you have cameras that you can remotely look at, then you can confirm the motion that's going on in the room. Was there a dog, a cat? Was there a person? Was it a shift in environmental factors, or perhaps maybe there's a person? If all those get checked off as no, then maybe something else is there. So It has its advantages, it definitely has its disadvantages, but just like every other type of motion sensor out there, it can detect those subtle disturbances that don't involve heat or visible motion, but it can still be subject to other things. And they will mesh together with other devices to kind of create a net, if you will. So if you have an environment where you can do this, I highly recommend experimenting. Sometimes you might find it will work for you. Can't say. I'm just saying might. But now, if they have these types of things out there for motion detection, can you actually prove that it's a ghost? In the game, yes, but in real life, as I mentioned, it may not always be the case. Now, one thing for sure, motion sensors altogether, when you do pair them with things like cameras or whatnot, can be a great way to corroborate what's going on, as I mentioned. And I know a lot of these types of devices that are out there can be awful expensive. And I've had that question posed to me. This again from the original conversation and segment I did previously. Drew, can you just do this with like really cheap stuff? Well, remember the toys I talked about? Yes, you can, in short. Motion detection can absolutely be a good tool on a tight budget. And the key is choosing the right type of motion detection, because the price range can be very huge for like more professional type of equipment. But I found over time that just because you have the right tools doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be effectively used by the investigator, especially if they're still new at finding all these things out. Now, I want you to know this is not instructional as I go forward, but one thing for sure I'll let you know is that practice makes perfect. And sometimes what's the difference between a beginner and someone who's well seasoned is someone who learns the limitations of their equipment and knows how to effectively deploy them. This is one of those instances. And if you have a shoestring budget, I found that a lot of motion activated toys, even though they're cheap, they can be responsive and surprisingly effective in eliciting interaction with said entities that you might be looking for. Plural, I say that because in some cases there have been locations that in fact have not only one but several. And you'll hear that possibly even with like a spirit box that could be deployed next to a motion sensor. Words come out, the motion sensor goes off. Or perhaps the motion sensor goes off and you might have a dot machine in the room and it disturbs it enough that you see motion and then something go through the dots and create kind of like, a disturbance in those dots that you see. So great way to confirm. The one that sticks out the most is that there was a motion sensor and one of those dot machines was a bunch of dots in the room and whatnot. And they actually had a little stuffed teddy bear. Now, hear me out on this one. They said, well, can you show yourself to us? And all the lights went out. The only thing that didn't was that dot machine because it had its own independent power and the motion detector that was there. They both went off. You could see something shift and then almost immediately the light goes back on. And when that happened, there was something right there and it literally ran right back into the wall that it came from. I'm assuming from the same direction it came from because you could see the motion like it was coming forward, like it was an actor on a stage about to deliver some kind of like monologue. I found it interesting, to say the least. Now, these playful types of interactive toys or whatnot, when triggered, you can deploy them in many places depending on your budget. But if it's, again, a shoestring, a lot of the devices out there for children or whatnot can be just as effective and can run you anywhere from $10 to $30. Most people can get those, and it's great. Like I mentioned, they can get a whole set of cat balls, which are wonderful toys in themselves, but they're also a great thing to start with. And those can basically run you like, $10, $15 for a set of 5, looking in the right place or what have you. So it does, provide a cheap way to be able to begin your investigations. Unfortunately, I can also guarantee it may not necessarily draw in a budget like you would perhaps say on the game phasmophobia, but I would probably tell you right now that some of the stuff they have so far as motion sensors, they would call it, ghost confirmation. I would call it just, it shows something went on. And these would also be great tools to use. Now, the best teams, I think, that are out there, they can work with pretty much anything, and they can just, document what's going on, especially in larger places or whatnot, or if they need multi-sensor correlation with things going on. I think that would definitely be helpful and effective. And so if you have that kind of a budget and do things, there are places that even can go, they cost more and they might be more effective. I'll call those high end, but they can be as much as $400 and $500 for just a single item. And I don't know about you, I don't have that budget. But my point being is that in the game, it's one way to confirm a ghost. In a real investigation, it is something that helps detect a shift and possibly could be motion, but it could be caused by other things. So do bear in mind that when folks are in an investigation altogether, you probably want to make sure that they are paired with other tools like an EMF, perhaps an audio recorder that does EVP, possibly even a camera that can show if there's something going on. And in all these cases, you'll find that they do go hand in hand and they complement as an enhancement of something else you might have in the room. I have done things where cameras have gone off because they have motion detection and they have an infrared sensor in there. And they've done things, and in some cases they don't always jibe with what's in the room. So environmental is what comes to mind. But occasionally, I do catch things, and they do show that something was going on. I just can't always determine what that something is unless it actually shows itself. And when I say show itself, I mean that perhaps, it could be a dust orb, it could be a bug. I have to put that out there. But as I mentioned before, if it does actually film something because of that motion of that orb, I catch it on camera and I can't explain it. Guess what? I just got some evidence, and it was because of that motion detection. So altogether, I think if you want to be creative, perhaps maybe a whole different, what do they call it? A repertoire of different motion-triggered objects might be a great way to encourage interaction and also detect and document. And if they are effectively placed with even the very basic of equipment, a tape recorder, or what do they call it now? A digital recorder, a basic camera like your smartphone or whatnot, can actually help enhance and increase the chance of detecting plausible evidence of some type of paranormal activity. And I think that's the important part here and why I would emphasize it. I've seen it in the truck. I know what's there. I kind of raised an eyebrow as to why do I want to rely on this for the game. It's a great thing. It gives you a bonus. But in a real investigation, I've seldom seen it as just a reliable way to know when folks have constantly debunked these types of equipment when deployed by themselves. It doesn't mean that it's something else, but it can very well be argued that something in the room or in the area that these motion sensors have been put in place, that they can and could and possibly be something other than spirit activity. So, are they a good, effective piece of equipment to keep on hand? Yes. Are they the only equipment you need? No. Can they be paired with stuff that will help you detect paranormal activity? Yes. Is it something that you have to pay hundreds of dollars for? No. So, if you get anything from this today, as I mentioned, yes, in the game itself, I know it was an effective tool. In a real investigation, it can be still effective, but I would definitely recommend it's paired with other equipment. And if I sound like I'm just kind of pushing things out there like that, well, it's probably because I want to make sure that it's at least brought into attention of how someone on an investigation would use a motion detection type of equipment in tandem with other things. Go watch a few of these. You can find them pretty much anywhere, live or pre-recorded. And again, I'm going to give a shout out to Badlands Paranormal and also to Hill City, as I was watching some of their stuff and I was kind of looking at the equipment that they were using and taking into account what could and couldn't go on. Now, I may talk about a few other things that you would find in that same phasmophobia truck, but one thing for sure, as I let you know, this is something that is, I'm going to just say editorial. It is not instructional, but I am addressing it because of that conversation that I had. And I think what drew my attention the most is that it was a game that I was kept saying, well, this isn't a real investigation. Yes and no. But here is one aspect, one tool that you would find in that game and also see applied in a real investigation that would at least add credence to what you may or may not find. So do you think that you would want to have a motion sensor if you were to do your own live investigation? Well, I'll definitely let you be the judge. But if you find yourself talking about it or even shopping for a motion sensor, hopefully somewhere in there you might talk about it with me. Where else? Friday Night Dark at nighttracks.com. Hey, this is Drew, and I bid you good night.